before we watch something else? And if there's anyone with a comment that you want to make, please go ahead before we move on to the next one. All right, Florence, if you can please mute yourself. Thank you. Wonderful. All right. So we will explore a bit more. Dr. Morton has covered a fair bit about stress. We're going to talk a bit more. I'm not too sure why this is not allowing me to do that. All right, so let me try again. All right. So we'll try and, it's defined stress, common stressors, effects of stress on the body, and strategies we can use to relieve stress. There is good stress that was described in the 50s as eustress, the kind of good stress that will keep us on toes when we have an exam coming on Monday, that little stress that will actually push you to get prepared for it. Or you have a journey to make tomorrow, that stress that will get you to organize and pack up your bags and get whatever you need. Then there is bad stress, which is also described as distress. That bad stress is one that overwhelms. When we are overwhelmed by stress, then it becomes distress. So now, what is really stress? Is a simple definition here. That is, it is our response to any demand, event, or anything, person, place, or anything else that poses a challenge or a threat to our well-being. So these things, the way we respond to them is what constitutes stress. Now, that is why it can be either eustress or distress. We'll see that very shortly. It was described by Dr. Walter Cannon in the 1920s as a fight or flight response. It is a survival mechanism. When you go bush, and a wild animal emerges from the bushes and it charges at you, well, the body responds such a way that it wants to preserve itself. And so hormones are produced. We saw adrenaline is produced that cuts off blood supply to the less urgent parts of the body. Blood is channeled to the muscles. The eyes open up wide so you see where you're going. The heart beats faster to deliver the energy. Sugar is suddenly increased in the bloodstream to provide the energy. Your breathing becomes faster to supply the oxygen you need. And so you run. At that particular point in time, nothing else matters, just the need to flee from that situation or fight it to get yourself safe. So it is a survival mechanism. The hormone cortisol it's been described as the stress hormone, is produced as part of this stress response. But in essence, we have got two systems. There is what we call the sympathetic nervous system, and then there is the parasympathetic nervous system. When you run away from this animal that was charging at you, you go and sit down and take a breath. Oh, that thing was going to kill me. So you need now to calm down. These changes, these hormones that we are charging in the body needs to be tempered down. The sympathetic nervous system is the one responsible for preparing the body, giving the body the energy and all that it needs, responsible for the cortisol, adrenaline, and all those hormones. The opposite system, called the parasympathetic nervous system, now is the one that helps the body to calm down and stop the production of these hormones, and so that your breathing comes down to normal and your heart beats at the normal rate, and the rest of the body starts to get the blood supply it needs and the energy and all that. But so this affects metabolism in the sense that the energy is directed to areas in the body that require. Blood pressure goes up, heart rate and breathing rate goes up, your pupils open up, and blood vessels constrict, and blood pressure goes up, as we've noted. All of these things are to help us. We saw the lining of the intestines is quite massive, and within that, there is a lot of, there is a great deal of immune function and other functions that are happen within that particular system. We will see at some stage what these bacteria do in the intestines, but I want us to look at what we can identify as stressors, because stressors are the ones that trigger our stress response. And so what are the common stressors? Stressors are generally any demand, event, person, place, and so on, or any other thing that poses a threat or a challenge to our well-being, as we saw earlier on. What are these things in our lives? So first, there is a stressor, and the next thing that happens is that the body actually responds. Now, how you respond, it determines whether it is eustress or distress. And when you encounter stressors, something actually happens in the brain. And that is what we're going to try and look at in a little bit more detail. The brain has got sections that do various functions. The frontal lobe is the command center, or rather the command and control center. That is where planning, reasoning, thinking, judgment, decisions, and even the power of the will are exercised. That is the point. Now, stress can disengage that part of your brain. And if it does so, it means your reaction is going to happen without you thinking. In other words, someone might cut in front of you, you are driving, somebody cuts in front of you, and it slows down immediately. If your frontal lobe is disengaged by this incident, there is another part of the brain called the limbic system, the part that controls emotions and so on and so forth. That one does not know reasoning or what. It only knows emotional actions such as crying, yelling, punching, arguing, etc. So if stress disengages your frontal lobe, the command and control center, where reasoning and thinking happens, you will act without thinking. And so that's where you find people crying, yelling, or fighting, arguing as their response to this stressor. So briefly, the sympathetic nervous system is a system of nerves in the brain that helps our body to activate the fight or flight response. That system, its activity increases when we are stressed or in danger, or we are physically active. And it causes the production of adrenaline, which provides us with the strength. The opposite system is the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us to calm down after we have been after we are through that threatening situation, and it conserves energy for use later or for other functions such as digestion and other systems. So common stressors, we saw the statistics that were quoted. In fact, in America, road traffic has been noted as one of the #1 stressors among the people there. The second one was work or job pressure. Another one was change. Because the next one is the environment where people live in. There are people who will look at their kitchen and they cannot stand it if things are untidy or the sink is full. Some people will not do a thing until they actually have cleared that. So the environment or their house is looking very unkempt and messy. Some people cannot stand that. And so you hear people saying, oh, this stresses me. So they go clear it to avoid getting a stress response from it. What they have actually done is they have used their frontal lobe to deal with that stressor so that it does not become distress. Finances, bills, loans, school fees, etc., can also be stressors. Finance has been identified as one of the big issues that affect people's stress levels. The next one is, of course, relationships. When there's conflict, divorce, and other things, or work relationships between workers and the boss, and so on and so forth, that is another major stressor. In America, people surveyed many, a large proportion related to, identify workplace, the workplace as one of the biggest stressors that they have. Sickness or bereavement is being identified as a major stressor. Poor nutrition, inadequate sleep, media overload. Question is this: how many stress signals do you have? You don't have to answer this one. Just count yourselves. Do minor problems overwhelm you, or do they overwhelm you continuously? Number 2, do you feel nervous or worried about a lot of things? Number 3, do you sometimes find that you can't stop thinking about your problems? Number 4, are you frustrated and angry all the time? And the reality is that if you have got at least 2 of these, and then you have a risk of getting the effects of stress. So let's see how it affects us. And there are many ways. I may not cover everything. There are immediate effects, such as headache, muscles get tensed up, people get tummy upset, the heart beats faster, racing heart, and the people breathe shallowly. Just remember these immediate effects of the stress response. They are going to be useful when we're going to look at ways of trying to counteract or trying to relieve the stresses. The immediate effect is what we can deal with in the first instance, then the rest of the strategies we look at a little later. Then there are ongoing effects. So if our stress response is persistently activated, if we're having to go into this fight or flight mode repeatedly or frequently, headaches may persist. We may have backache. We may have sleep disturbance. We may have, we may experience fatigue. We may experience anxiety. We may experience worry. We may have colds and cases of flu again continuously. We may end up having depression. We can have persistent digestive system upsets. This might include what is commonly referred to as heartburn, which is really reflux. The acids from the stomach come back up the food pipe, especially when somebody is lying down, and they cause irritation, and that can actually persist for quite a while. People can have the effects of asthma, rather the symptoms of asthma. And you can actually end up having persistently elevated blood pressure, and there are people who die from stroke. Heart disease, we noted that stress will cause the blood cells, rather the blood to thicken. And when blood thickens, a whole lot of things happen. Blood clots form easily, and so on and so forth. So but you know, the unfortunate thing is this: when people get stressed out, natural response is to go out and find peace or happiness. And many people find peace and happiness, unfortunately, in unhealthy life activities, such as consuming sugary foods that are unhealthy, fatty foods, alcohol, and even addictions of all kinds. Can be media, can be all sorts of things, just to try and find that peace or happiness that that has been disrupted by the stress response. Now, these things may give someone only temporary happiness, but this usually is followed by problems. It can be sicknesses, addictions frequently go on for long, and a whole lot of other untold health problems because of seeking the peace and happiness that has been robbed of them. Now, people tend to activate, this is the unfortunate thing, people tend to activate the fight or flight response multiple times during a typical day, usually because the situations that are annoying or stressful, but not necessarily life-threatening, happen throughout the day. We really, so long as we live in this world, we cannot really avoid, these stressors. These situations may include traffic jams, long lines at the grocery store, work deadlines, and so on and so forth. But all those stress hormones that are pumped again and again and again and again in the system actually take a toll on the body. Over time, it might be low-grade chronic stress. It can actually give someone established blood pressure that will require medication or treatment. The fight or flight response can become harmful when it is elicited frequently or prolonged. When high levels of stress hormones are secreted, often they can contribute to a number of stress-related medical conditions, including cardiovascular diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, fatigue, and many more. And so stress, as Robert Sapolsky has said, stress can break havoc with your metabolism, raise your blood pressure, burst your white blood cells, make you flatulent, pass a lot of wind, ruin your sex life, as said. And if that is not enough, it can actually cause damage to the brain. You saw that experiment. I'm not going to repeat it. Adrenal glands that produce adrenaline in the kidney, and that's where cortisol is also produced. But the control is in the brain, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland, one hormone is produced, which triggers this next one. So it's a cascade as it was described in that. So what are some of the strategies that we need? Remember, the immediate effects of stress is shallow, rapid breathing. And so we can consciously change the breathing to make it deep. You know, you breathe like a child breathes with your tummy muscles. Take a deep breath. Take a deep, deep breath. And out, make them slow. You can actually change your breathing rate that way. That can help relieve the immediate effects of that stressful situation. So deep, slow breaths consistently in the face of that stressor can actually help. The other thing is you want to think the situation through. If it's somebody who cut you in front and they stopped, you want to consider, why could this person do this? Did they do this to spite me? So you think your way through it, and that is allowing your frontal lobe to take control so that it is engaged. And if that happens, your response to that stressor will actually be reasonable. It is not going to be from your limbic or the emotional center of the brain. You can relax your muscles that are tense by massage. You can massage. Usually the neck muscles, for instance, might be very tense and so on and so forth. You can massage to reduce the tension. That is one of the immediate things. But the big move that you can make is to essentially adopt a healthy lifestyle. This is one sure thing that helps us deal with ongoing stress. Ways you can lessen the effects of stress, that is part of that healthy lifestyle, is one, you have regular physical activity. There's nothing that boosts moods quickly better than physical activity. Adequate sleep. Anyone who has had a night that didn't sleep well, you check their blood pressure. In the morning, it's going to be high. They will be tense. Their people get cranky and so on and so forth. Adequate sleep is critical. And then we have a healthy diet. Relaxing music can actually do wonders. One psychologist in America uses it regularly with his clients who come very anxious and quite stressed. He simply gets them seated, quiet room, plays classical music for 20 minutes, and then he calls them into the office to sit. Many would have actually been so relaxed and they have no issues to discuss with the psychologist after just 20 minutes of classical music, soft classical music playing in the background. You can do that because relaxation is the antidote for the stress response. And of course, enjoying the outdoors is one of those things because it supplies you with enough oxygen, and nature's got a way it actually gives us that calmness and tranquility that we need. Like most things, what doing lifestyle change isn't easy. It can be hard to break old habits and easy to fall back into them when things get tough. Because generally you find that's what people know, and so they will end up to do that which they know. Stress relieving strategies can help us through those difficult times so that we respond in a positive way. Instead of responding using a limbic system. Now, in some cases, so this is where reasoning comes in. Remember, we talked about one of the things you can do is to actually think through that stressful situation. Sorry. we can lower our expectations. For instance, if someone has done something that you did not expect them to do, because you had such a high esteem for them, you expected them to act better than what they have done. Once they have done that, you can lower your expectations of them and know that now that they are capable of doing this, perhaps I was mistaken to rate them that high. So when they do that, you are not going to be disappointed. We need to limit the exposure to stressful situations. If you're in a workplace that is quite stressful because of relationships and all that, and you cannot get these relationships fixed, you might even want to request transfer or you move to another section. And so you can try and limit the exposure to stressful situations. If it is your work for which your boss keeps calling you to the office and causes you stress, you might want to change the way you work, perhaps do things according to the way they are prescribed. Then you reduce the number of times they're going to be concerned with your work. We need to clarify our worries or concerns. Are these worries that I have about this thing well-founded or not? If they are not, then I should probably adjust the way I consider them. So managing stress has a lot to do with how we worry, and managing worry has a lot to do with where we focus our attention. So to manage stress is dependent on how we manage worry. And managing worry depends on where we put our focus or attention. Humans are the only creatures that create stress within their own minds. Mark Twain said, I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened. Sometimes these troubles are actually imagined. And so we know this serenity prayer, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can change, and of course the wisdom to know what the difference is between those things I can change and those that I cannot change. So practical things you can do to actually address stress. We mentioned this, adequate sleep, 6 to 8 hours without compromising that. To be physically active, we need at least 30 minutes a day. Might be just walking or gardening, running, swimming for some people, or walking. We need to have regular healthy meals, avoid substances, drugs, substances, and take time to relax every day. You can go to a park, fresh air, enjoy time with family and friends, and avoid overcommitting to tasks. We need to limit the demands we place on ourselves. So sometimes we need to say no to certain things. We need to try and be organized. This idea of to-do lists and so on and so forth, they are actually helpful so that you don't want to, say you are traveling, you want to make your list. These are the things I need to pack. You don't want to arrive at the next destination and find that you forgot to include some important item that you had. When you have too much on your plate, you can share the tasks, delegate or prioritize. If you cannot delegate, you identify what is first and what is next, and so on and so forth. Cut back on commitments and spend more time with family. You can make life simpler. We don't have to live complicated lives. And if we have to change things, even making lifestyle changes like we have been going through, do things one at a time. Do not do them all at once because that can overwhelm you. And so, of course, relaxation is the antidote. Relax with music, relax with gardening or to nature and stuff like that. while we're working throughout the day, we need to schedule short breaks to allow us to de-energize. If feeling tense, you need to practice slow, deep breaths, as we mentioned earlier. Classical music works very well, vacation, and so on and so forth. And the other thing, of course, where thinking comes in, is to find a way of resolving conflicts between you and anyone else in an amicable manner. Because anytime you get angry with anyone, you will invariably get your cortisol levels going up with all the attendant problems. And we need to live a life of gratitude and thankfulness. And, you know, we can do, okay, we can do whatever we need to do in order to reduce the production or the activity of that system that is causing the stress response.